Hey, Greg. So I invited my sister Wanda, so I'm glad she was able to make it.
I thought she looked like you. Hi, Wanda. It's so nice to meet you. Did
Nice
Wayne
to
tell you
meet
that I was
you.
his professor at one time?
Yes, he was telling me. That's so awesome.
Yeah, he has just rocketed off from where I saw him last, though, in person. I'm so
Great.
proud of him. Welcome to
Yes,
the
me too.
conversations. You're welcome anytime, and feel free to invite anyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody to unmute yourselves until we get back to our other scenarios. So go ahead and unmute yourselves.
And I just would like to open it up for on Fred's just question there. If any of the groups want to say something about how they responded to that, or any enlightenment that you found. Oh, you're muted, Fred.
I think we have Neil with a raised hand.
Well, I was going to say something, but not to answer to Gregory's question. So I'll try to unraise my hand.
Okay, Janice, you had a comment?
Yeah, we have trouble in our group. We had trouble understanding what binary is and being able to go with it from beyond that. But then we were also saying how inflammatory the word racism is, and could we change it to racially insensitive for us guys that aren't out carrying the big flags and the white supremacists with the capital W, capital S. But that's, it's just such a complex question. I mean, I opened up the book trying to find where she defines what binary is, and we just need some flesh on that.
Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else having trouble understanding the concept?
Well, this is Rich. I'm looking on page 2 of the chapter, and it's the racist equal bad and non-racist equal good. But I look at take for instance, the Southern and the Northern. Now, racist.
Or maybe they're going to cover that.
Maybe they're going to cover that, but they're educated Southerners and they're educated Northerners. So I guess I'm a little confused there because there's young and old in both. So if you look at the Southern people and the Northern people, we can say, well, the Southern people were bad in the goes back many years, and the Northern people were good. But wait a minute, no, the Northern people, they weren't that good either. I mean, they're hidden. And so, yeah, they don't want to admit it, but let's face it, they were bad also. So I guess a little confusing there, but I guess it goes back to the good and bad and the binary definition, and then and now.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich. Let me take another run at it. It's what she's attempting to convey is that the civil rights era really made racism stand out. I mean, and we view racism, a lot of people view racism as if it's a intentional act of discrimination and it's done by bad people.
Mm-hmm.
And in our own persona, I would bet that all of us feel like we're not racist. We're not racist. We're good people. I can't, but what Robin is saying, D'Angelo, is that we can't really see racism today, and we can't take steps to really dismantle it when we see it if we think it's only a good and a bad concept, that it's only a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because racism happens in our systems. It's a systems structural phenomenon, and it is not always intentional. Racism, and we all do things sometimes unintentional that is racist. And being, does that make sense?
Yeah, I was using
clarifying of it. Yeah.
I was using the word implicit and explicit.
Yeah, I think that clarifies it a little bit better.
Bobby,
because if
comment?
it's more prominent
Right.
in our society because it's It's not just people that do it intentionally and it's bad.
Mhm,
That
okay.
happens for sure. We see that, and it's
Yeah,
we react to it when we do. But what she's saying is it's not a good and bad phenomenon. It is here, and it's also done by good people.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
When I said that, for police to have to require a 4-year degree, that was unintentional. If I restricted that could be considered kind of it discriminates about people of color and maybe of socioeconomic status that can't get a degree if I require it. And that's a systems thing, and it's not intentional. It's not evil, but it could be racist in a way.
Could be.
It could discriminate against people, especially people of color that can't afford to go to college. So it's kind of along those lines.
Yeah, okay.
So
Thank you.
that way it's like a new lens you put on, like, oh, I can see it all. No. Brad,
Bobby,
did you want to do anything else before we go to the next round, or anybody have any other comments?
we had one last comment here from Bobby.
Oh, I think it was let me see if I can get this together, because there's been so much to unpack. And I can't remember the name of the woman who said, I wish there was a different vocabulary, because I think when I listen to this group often that there's a mix up, and maybe because in the country there feels like one, between personal actions and belief systems. And, it's just like, I believe this in my core and I act on it, versus systemic, institutionalized things that are ingrained in the state, in the country, in the city. And I think we can look at some of those things, look at the math and say, that's racist. We can look at the history and say, oh, it came from a racist place and it's bad. We need to get together and work on that. I think we can call out things in the judicial system, in housing, in a lot of things. We can look at them and we can say, okay, that is not right. And I think when we confuse it with personal actions of today, of what happens like this month, what we do, then it's different than institutionalized. I just wish we had two different words.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
very
very
good,
good.
Bobby.
Good
Very
point.
good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Wanda.
Yeah.
Janet has wanted to say something. Janet?
Oh, well, I was just agreeing, because I've had this feeling for a long time that the word racism is so inflammatory that our defenses go up immediately. So that if we could change the language a little to what I was suggesting, and I think it's what Janice said, perhaps racially insensitive or some other words. And it's not dodging the issue, it's just simply sort of cooling things down a bit so we can talk without people being so defensive that that they just walk away or get angry or make things worse.
When they express white fragility.
If I get started talking about it, sometimes I'll just say, hey, just because I'm say you're a racist doesn't mean I'm telling you you're a bad person. And sometimes they try to figure that one out. So I kind of unpack that word just by saying, I'm not saying you're a bad person, I'm just saying you're a racist. And so let's start working on it.
And David and Bobby, you've hit the nail on the head on this concept. You really have. And that's the point, is that, but when David said that, I had a reaction. If you told me I was racist, I would just be so like,
right,
I'm going to get white fragility on you. And you're right. But see, that's her point. That's her point, is that we've got to be able to say it like that, just like what Bobby said, just like what you said. And Janice, I think, said it too. It's a how can we take the fire out of it, the emotion out of it, so that we can talk about it? But that's her point. It's not a good, bad thing. And that's what we're starting to peel away. It's like a police officer, George Floyd, that's racist. But police stopping brown people more often than others just because they have this idea they're involved in crime and that they're poor and that they probably have bad, no license or whatever, no insurance, that's racism too. and it's not necessarily intentional. I mean, they're doing it as part of their job. Congress enacting laws that made it really hard for crack cocaine, it locked up brown people. That's racist, and it's unintentional.
Just think about, you guys, think about,
And Wanda, oh, excuse me.
I was just going to say, just think about how far we've come. When we first started these conversations, if we'd had something like this, it would have been like going to somebody's fancy house with mud on our shoes, and we would have not wanted to walk on their rug. But now we know each other well enough that we can talk about what we're uncomfortable with, what we don't understand, and what we're trying to come to grips with. That means we're learning something, and that's really something.
Wanda, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was gonna share, binary as a term is fairly new for me too, but the concept and the idea really isn't. And one of the things that is like dangerous with a binary and a belief that that racists look a certain way, or like that they speak a certain way, they do things in a certain way. All that is really us trying to separate ourselves from that, right? All that really is us trying to say, well, we're not that way. So this is the image of a racist person.
Yeah.
But the reality is that we really need to look at ourselves and break that binary and see that we all have moments where we are racist, where we have racist ideas, or we contribute to a behavior or take an action that is racist. And so if we continue to believe that it's a binary, that it's bad, so that doesn't allow us to actually reflect on the ways that we're contributing to racism, the ways that we're contributing to the system or the creation or the perpetuating the same policies that are creating this unequal, oppressive system. We can't look at that if we're not willing to look at ourselves in the way that we are, contributing. And that's what's so dangerous about the binary. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Good.
Very good. Excellent.
Can I add something to this for a moment?
Of course.
For many years, I administered programs for behavioral health through the Adventist health system. And we started out with serving mentally retarded people. And that was abhorrent to many people. So then we called them developmentally disabled. And that became even worse. And so now there are special needs people. Now, our changing the nomenclature didn't help that person who is suffering at all. It helped us, I guess. But I'm a little reluctant to keep changing the names of things to make me feel better. That's it.
That's very well said, Lowell. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Neil, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
No, I can't get my hand down.
We'll get it down.
Bobby's got her hand up.
I can say that at least in Oregon, working with special needs people, that name has made a world of difference in that person saying, I think differently, not like I'm broken. Like I think different. I'm going to have to do this differently. I have some special needs, but I'm not broken. World, don't look at me like I'm broken. I just have some needs. And so just want to say that.
Good. Thank you, Bobby.
I just think this discussion is rich. And what I've been thinking about the concept of, if we could come up with a different term, racial insensitivity or whatever it is, that concept that you all are talking about, what Robin DiAngelo would say. And my guess is that she would say? I think she would say, no, you're showing white fragility.
Exactly.
You gotta say it. You gotta own it. It is what it is. It's called racism. And if you can't say racism, is that white fragility? I mean, I think she would challenge us to think, But what I love about it is that we're taught, like Fred said, we are in this, because when somebody first said it, I think it was Janice and Bobby about a different term, my mind went there and said, yeah, that might actually be good. But then I'm starting to think, well, what would Robin say? I think she'd say, no, you're taking that, you're taking the easy way out, Greg.
We're making it too easy.
Yeah.
Now I do have my hand up.
Okay, Neil and then Galen.
Bobby triggered something for me that I didn't really realize how it happened, but she was talking about and Lowell too, about the development of disabled people. And one of the things that I opened my mouth and talked about doing and caused me a lot of effort afterwards is I became a CASA here in Polk County, which deals with kids in foster care. One of the first kids I got was an autistic 3-year-old girl, and very severely autistic, nonverbal, really high on the spectrum. But I heard a young lady at 18 give a address at a church in Lake Oswego at graduation time who was also autistic, and that contrast between those two people and what the young lady at 18 had achieved gave me experience what could happen to the 3-year-old severely autistic child. This is slightly different, but I understood what happened and how it could be changed by seeing what happened. I think the same thing's true with the white privilege thing. So, that was a real eye-opener to me, to listen to an 18-year-old girl who gave a 10-minute talk in front of 300 people at a church.
Yeah. Thank you, Neil.
Galen,
Anyone?
Yeah, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got a yard blower thing going on outside, so I keep muting myself. We talked about the concept in our group of overt versus covert racism, and we don't like to think of ourselves as racist because that conjures up that overt racism, name calling, nastiness that we see. But my humble opinion is that if you're white and you're born in this country, we're all racist because we're products of racist systems. And that goes to my definition of racism, which we talked a little bit about when haven't in the larger group, but a long time ago, I heard it as defined as power plus privilege equals racism. So therefore, if you don't have power, if you don't have privilege, you can't be racist, but you can be biased or prejudiced or bigoted or, other things.
Very good, Galen. I'd like to send you back into.
All people can be racist. Sorry, I just wanted to.
What was that, Wanda?
That all people can be racist. So it's not just white people. It's black and brown people. It's
right. All
people can be racist.
Right. David, I think, was talking. David,
It has to be combined with. I agree with Galen. It has to be combined with power. So you have to. Otherwise, it's prejudice, but it's not race. It's the power angle is what distinguishes a lot of the difference. And basically, if you really want to go that far, really only when I went to a multicultural conference, they pretty well said only really white men can be racist. Women can be prejudiced, but white men have the power. So only white men can be racist. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that statement.
Power is a lot of it. It's just like my friend from Africa, when she talked about racism there, power has a lot to do with it. And it's in there interracial, but it's about power and it's more tribal. Okay, Fred, you're muted.
I think there's another thing too. I think that racism isn't pretty. It's just not pretty. But neither is sometimes anti-racism. It perhaps is a bit like making sausage, and it's not going to be clean necessarily. Mm-hmm. And so when folks are like out in the streets demonstrating for their points of view to like BLM, it might not be pretty. and I'm not talking about violence now, but just what demonstrations are all about. And so I think that's important, that it's change, political change, revolution is not something that we can necessarily bring about quietly sitting in a library and reading a book. We sometimes have to get out there, and we sometimes have to get our hands dirty.
Right. And if we believe racism is only intentional acts of discrimination and power against others, we can't see, and that's Robin's point, we cannot see the systemic racism that happens. That's part of our system.
That's right.
That's part of our own white power systems that we have in place. That's her point. Wow, this is a good discussion. We're only on one question. Let's go to round two. Let's put you back into some breakouts. And this one here, it feels like maybe I'm just going to leave you in there for maybe about 8 minutes. But the question is, why do we, regardless of our race, avoid talking about racism? We've kind of touched on it, but I want you to go in your group, in a small group, and really look at that question face up. Why do you avoid talking about racism? And then we'll just get some sense of that when you come back. See you soon.